Have you ever noticed how some people can alter the atmosphere of a room without lifting their voice? They don't argue, they don't demand, they don't explain, they simply pull back. And suddenly, something shifts. People feel it before they understand it. Questions surface, tensions rise, attention sharpens. Now imagine if you did that. If instead of responding instantly, you paused. If instead of filling silence, you allowed it to stretch. If instead of reacting, you withdrew your presence. What do you think would happen? Because this is where a real shift begins. When you stop being endlessly accessible, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, the environment around you destabilizes. Not because you did something wrong, but because people were accustomed to reaching you whenever they wanted. Your reactions were familiar, your availability, your predictability, your energy was reliable. And when that disappears, the system panics. People aren't upset that you changed. They're unsettled because they can no longer steer you through impulse. The moment you withdraw, the rules change. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who spent his entire life studying the hidden forces that shape human behavior, once observed that everything that provokes us and others becomes a mirror for something unresolved within ourselves. He wasn't talking about surface level psychology, but rather the unconscious patterns that quietly run our lives. Keep that in mind, because when you become less accessible, notice who grows restless, notice who becomes irritated, notice who tries to provoke a reaction just to feel you again. That desperation doesn't reveal who you are. It exposes how much control they had without you realizing it. You've been trained to give, to smooth tension, to keep harmony alive even at your own expense. So you say yes to avoid friction. You respond quickly to avoid guilt. You offer explanations to avoid misunderstanding. And each time you do, you release a little more of yourself. By the end of the day, what remains isn't satisfaction, it's fatigue, it's dull frustration, it's an emptiness that doesn't have a clear cause. But here's why. You've been accessible to people who never earned access. This isn't about abandoning the world, it's about reclaiming yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the slow, often uncomfortable journey toward becoming whole. And that journey begins the moment you realize that silence can carry more authority than argument. And withdrawal, when chosen consciously, is not avoidance, but power. So ask yourself, how long will you let others dictate your emotional reflexes? How long will you move on cue whenever someone touches a nerve? Because the moment you stop reacting on command, something irreversible happens. You've been conditioned since early life to equate worth with availability, to believe that being responsive makes you valuable, that being present keeps you safe from rejection. But here's the truth, stripped of comfort. Excessive availability is not generosity, it's self erasure. And as long as you remain accessible to everyone, you will be consumed, depleted, and forgotten the moment you no longer serve a function. Why? Because predictability breeds usage. People learn they can summon you when they need reassurance, distraction, or validation. They press the button and you respond. Then you're set aside. You mistake this cycle for connection, but it isn't. Jung spoke of a persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And this mask is precisely what keeps you overexposed. You say to yourself, "It's fine," while you're suffocating. You reply instantly while exhausted. You justify yourself as if your boundaries require approval. But the more space you occupy in other people's lives, the less space you inhabit in your own life. Constant availability is a quiet form of self-abandonment. It looks like kindness, but it feels like duty. But underneath, it's often fear. Fear of being replaced. Fear of being unwanted. Fear of standing alone. But here's the cruel paradox. The moment you are available, the less valuable you become. What is never earned is never respected. So stop and pause. Who truly deserves your time? Who merits your attention? And who benefits most from your absence? But before you answer, there's something deeper you need to understand. Why is it so hard for you not to react? Why do we give ourselves away so easily? Jung called it psychic energy. Your mind is not limitless. Every thought, every emotion, every response draws from a finite reserve. When you defend yourself against meaningless criticism, you spend it. When you engage in pointless conflict, you spend it. When you over-explain, over-give, over-care, you spend it. And Jung warned, what you resist binds you, and what you react to controls you. Chronic exhaustion is not weakness, it is misallocation. And exhausted people are vulnerable. Those who exploit do not need force. They sense depletion. They notice who reacts instantly, who feels guilty easily, who cannot tolerate silence. A healthy psyche conserves energy and knows when to engage, when to withdraw, when to observe. Power does not come from constant action. It comes from choice. How many nights have you replayed conversations in your head? How many hours have you fed conflicts long after they should have died? That is energy bleeding without return. When energy is guarded, presence intensifies. When it is scattered, you become transparent. So begin here. Observe your triggers. Notice where you lose center. Those are the exit points of your power. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming sovereign. Because once you reclaim your energy, something unsettling happens. You disrupt projections, and that unsettles people deeply. Opportunistic personalities thrive on predictability. They don't dominate by force. They activate patterns. Projection allows them to turn you into a role, a caretaker, a fixer, emotional refuge. They don't see you, they see utility. And why do you comply? Out of fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of abandonment, fear of breaking the image. The most effective manipulation is silent. It lives in guilt. an obligation, and a belief that you owe access. But when you stop reacting, the structure collapses. Silence breaks projection. Withdrawal dissolves roles. And this forces others to confront themselves, something many can't endure. They will provoke, criticize, create drama, not because you are wrong, but because you no longer stabilize their internal chaos. Jung said enlightenment does not come from imagining light, but from confronting darkness. Your silence reveals shadows, and now the question turns inward. Can you tolerate being misunderstood? Can you withstand rejection? Can you remain steady without approval? Because silence is not emptiness, it's recalibration. In a world addicted to noise, silence destabilizes control. While you speak, you are still playing. When you fall silent, the rules shift. Silence is not retreat, it's restraint. It's choosing not to feed cycles that drain you. But make no mistake, this comes at a cost. You will lose access to those who only valued your availability. You will appear distant to those who never saw your depth. And that is the price of individuation. As you mature, your words become rare because you understand that speech is investment. Not everyone deserves it. Sometimes silence is not absence, it's authority. And the most profound silence is not meant to disturb others. It is meant to reconstruct you. From this inner stillness, energy returns, clarity sharpens, and self-respect solidifies. Understanding this means nothing if behavior remains unchanged. Transformation begins with selectivity, not instant replies, not endless explanations, not emotional labor. You owe no one constant access. And that refusal will anger those who depended on your depletion. Individuation requires isolation, not loneliness, but sacred withdrawal, a return to center, a rebuilding of identity not shaped by external demand. Observe who distances themselves when you withdraw. Observe who provokes when you don't react. Observe who accuses you of changing when you protect yourself. These are confirmations, not warnings. Unavailability feels uncomfortable at first. Guilt surfaces and doubt whispers. That discomfort is conditioning dissolving. When you stop being available to everything, you become valuable to yourself. You will lose people, but you'll gain solidity. And eventually, solitude transforms, not into emptiness, but into presence. This is the solitude of the self-possessed, of one who no longer trades peace for approval. Jung understood that becoming whole requires separation from the collective. You are not escaping life, you are reclaiming it. Those unsettled by your absence never wanted you. They wanted the role. And when you no longer fit, that's when freedom begins. You become rare. You become grounded. You become ungovernable. And if you're still here, something in you already knows this. that being loved means nothing if it costs you yourself. True self-respect begins the moment you choose yourself, even if it means standing alone for a while. So ask yourself honestly, are you ready to be misunderstood, to be disliked, to be unneeded in exchange for being free? If this resonated, you already know the answer.